Groden. He served on every single investigation the government's ever done on this. He wrote the movie JFK, played 4 parts in it, was the chief consultant. He's the guy that released the Zapruder film. We never saw it before. He released it on national TV with Dick Gregory and Paul Rivera in 1975. Prior to that, all we saw was a few single frames in Life magazine. He's written 13 books. This one made #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. It was on the bestseller list for 6 months. His documentary is rated #1 currently 3 years in a row. It's a documentary on the case. It can't be shown in America though, across FCC lines. You gotta either buy it off his website or watch it in home with the curtain shut or in another country. But it's shown all over the world except for here. Let me tell you what happened that day. First of all, let me orient you. That X there is where the fatal headshot took the president's life. That's where President Kennedy. This area, this park, is a memorial for a guy named Dealey. That's why it's called Dealey Plaza. And all this concrete structure was here for a couple of decades before the president ever got here. And that's why it's not called Kennedy Plaza. It was already a memorial for Dealey. Kennedy's memorial is on the other side of that red castle-looking courthouse. Now this big clump of dirt here, that's called the grassy knoll. And it used to have grass, but we get about 1 million visitors a year down here, and that takes care of that pesky grass problem for us. But the significance of that is that's where about 80% of the witnesses out here that day said at least some of the shots came from, behind the fence on top of the grassy knoll. These two here were made during the making of the movie JFK. The fellow, the funny-looking guy with the beard, is my buddy, Robert Groden. Oliver Stone directed the movie. He was the film guy. Robert was the chief consultant on it, wrote all the Kennedy parts, played 4 parts in it. The rest of those were done the day of the assassination. Now you might recognize the end of the shooting sequence on the Zapruder film. Now the Zapruder film showed the actual assassination, and again we never saw it until he showed it on national TV. But the significance of it is it showed the opposite of what the Warren Commission concluded in '64. And it got the case reopened with a congressional investigation in 1975. They began their work in '76, and they reversed the Warren Commission. They ended up saying it was a conspiracy, and the shot came from over here as well as behind. That's where the federal government's been since '78 on this. The report came out in '79. But anyway, you know how many people were hit that day out here with bullets? 3. President Kennedy was shot in the throat. It exited back here about 4 times the size of the entrance wound. And he was also hit in the back. That bullet did not traverse the body. It was removed during the autopsy and was never seen again. How convenient. And then the fatal headshot took the president's life. That was the kill shot. Governor Conley, Texas governor, was sitting right in front of President Kennedy. He had a bullet that went through his wrist. He had a bullet going to his left thigh. He had a bullet that did traverse his chest cavity. And then you've got Mr. James Tague, a bystander down by the underpass, who was hit on the cheek after a bullet ricocheted off the curb down there. The only one that died was President Kennedy, and it looks like all the bullets were meant for him. But this is the end of that shooting sequence, and it's filmed at 18.3 frames per second. And the last shot was the fatal headshot, the one you need to keep shooting after that one. Well, you see, the Warren Commission was a 7-member panel appointed by President Johnson. He appointed 7 of his friends to look into it for a few months. They never hired a single investigator, by the way, not one. Only lasted a few months. They relied entirely on J. Edgar Hoover's FBI to do the investigation for them, which would have been fine, but the problem was the FBI report came back and it didn't agree with the Warren Commission on the shots and stuff, so the Warren Commission just didn't want to use it. Other than that, they didn't have any investigators. But the Warren Commission report, which by the way the Warren Commission didn't write, their subordinates wrote it, and they signed off on it. They hardly ever made the meetings. They made the photo op, but anyway, the Warren report says all the shots came from here. 2nd floor from the top, far end window of that building there, which was a warehouse for kids' school books at the time, Texas School Book Depository, and there was a guy working in that building named Lee Harvey Oswald for 4.5 weeks before the assassination. And they said he fired all the shots. He didn't get a trial because he was killed 2 days after the president, but he did maintain that he was innocent. He passed 2 lie detector tests. He passed a gunpowder residue test on his face and hands. They never could connect that gun really to him. But anyway, he was killed. Walter Cronkite said, hey, the guy that did it's dead, and we moved on. That's what it boils down to. They said that one of the shots that came from this window hit the president in the back of his head and killed him right where that X is and knocked him violently forward. We believed all that, folks, until Troublemaker here released his film. Again, it's filmed at 18.3 frames per second. And they said that when he was shot in the back of his head, it knocked him violently forward. But look, after the headshot, he's actually slammed back and to the left. He bounces off the back seat and then goes forward, and 18th of a second later, they skipped over that part. How convenient for them. In other words, from that edge towards that light post across the street, impossible with a shot from behind. Now this is the back of the president's head. It's called the occipital protuberance, that big bump back there. That whole piece of skull was blown out of his head, folks, right where that X is. And it's important for two reasons. I'm not trying to get gross here. Entrance wounds make little holes about the size of a bullet. Exit wounds, on the other hand, make big holes because it blows everything out the other side. So it begs the question, why was there a big exit wound on the backside of the head facing the shooter? Okay, he never turned around. Ought to be a little hole here and a big hole here. Ask any healthcare professional, hunter, a cop. Entrance wounds make small hole, exit wounds are bigger. Especially when it hits bone early on, because it all blows out, fans out like that. Also, when this was blown out of his head where that X is, it actually flew back into the left and landed just to the left of the light post over there. Again, impossible with the shot from behind. So he got back into the left here, he got back into the left here. Even Jackie's up on the back left part of the car grabbing another piece of skull. This one's about half that size. Here's President Kennedy on this side of the car, keeled over. It's thrown back into the left. 34-year-old Jackie jumps up there and grabs it. According to her Warren Commission testimony, what she said was, when she got back in the car, she was trying to put his head back on. She was in shock. When she got to the hospital, she gave that piece of skull to Dr. Jenkins. My point is, everything's back and to the left, impossible with a shot from behind. If you want to know where the kill shot came from, and I'm not saying all the shots, okay? I think shots came from front and back. But if you want to know where the kill shot came from, try going in reverse. Start at the light post over there where the bag of the skull and part of the brain landed. And in your mind's eye, come back with a straight line like a bullet flies through the air, through the X where the president was. Don't stop. Keep coming, keep coming. It ends up right there where 80% of the witnesses said some of the shots came from, the grassy knoll. Look here at this picture. This is from NBC photographer David Wigman's film. He was in the motorcade 6 cars behind the president filming, and on film he captured the smoke. But all the witnesses out here said they saw billowing out over the knoll from the fence after the headshot. The president's car racing underneath the underpass down there. The smoke lingered in the air about 3 seconds. And a bunch of people raced up here. Out of the 400 witnesses that were out here, about 150 of them went up here, actually. And they encountered a man behind the fence. And he said, whoa, hold on, I'm Secret Service. I'm holding the area secure. And he ordered everyone to leave the area. By then, 2 cops were up here. They helped him get rid of everybody. Well, that made sense for about 25 minutes until the head of the Secret Service here in Dallas showed up. He said he never had anybody up here. He said whoever it was bluffed him and got away. He said the same thing at the Warren Commission. In fact, they never figured out who that guy was.